Shabbat Shalom. If I had to name one of the biggest problems I see in the world, other than the fact that you people park on the wrong side of the street going the wrong way in Philadelphia, and I'll never get over it, I think I would say that it's a feeling that there's a lot of people working against one another. We don't have a unifying goal. Get to the moon, cure a thing, do something. We have a lot of conflicting goals, and it's okay, we have things that we conflict about, but it feels, I think, to some extent exhausting to navigate all of the different values and beliefs and ideologies and things and the antagonism that goes into it. And I want to start today by highlighting an anniversary from this week that, among all the things that have happened this week, is maybe on the lighter side, but I think quite important. Because Monday was the yahrzeit of Pete Seeger. And Pete Seeger, folk musician, and Pete Seeger was someone who believed deeply in people trying to come together, in work together. And if I've told this story before, I apologize, but I had the zechut, the merit of being at Pete's 90th birthday party. I mean, there were 40,000 of us at Madison Square Garden, but I was there with, all of his friends. And he was 90 and came out on stage, and it was beautiful. Like, Springsteen was there, Joan Baez was there, everyone came and everyone sang, new people, older people. It was just awesome. It was a great musical party. And Pete was already a little bit getting up there in years, so he performed a little bit, but he came out at one point, and I thought what was so fun was he didn't want to do a duet with, Ani DeFranco and Dave Matthews. He didn't want to sing with Springsteen, and he came out and he talked about harmony and singing together. And he said, it's not that hard, guys. Okay, I want everyone on this side of the room to sing this note. 40,000 people in Madison Square Garden. Anyone? Okay, sing this note. And he plays on the banjo and everyone sings. And then he goes, okay, now if you're over here, I want you to sing this note. Like he's a camp counselor in a bunk, right? And he gets the entire room to hum a chord together. And he said, if you're here, just pick a note, everyone hum together. And he talked about what it means to all sing together and make something beautiful when we combine all of our different notes. And I thought it was a beautiful way of thinking and being, and a fairly idealistic one. But he also then does sing a song called When I First Came to This Land. I'm not singing it for you right now. And at the end of it, he says, did you recognize the tune? And he goes through and he says, yeah, this tune is famous because it's a fairly simple chord progression that he points out as he sings through. It's the same as Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. It's the same as, and he went through all these different cultures and all these different groups that sing it. It's a sort of 1-4-1-4-1-5-1. It's not that difficult to go through, but then he says, and it used to be minor, and tell me if this is familiar. And he plays it, and it's Hatikva. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And so did a little bit of research on this. I am way out of my lane on this, so you'll correct me if this is wrong. But the tune apparently, actually started with us in the 1400s in Spain. And it was a minor tune with this Hatikva chord progression. And as we got kicked out at the end of those 1400s and made our way to different lands, the song got heard in Italy somewhere, and it gets turned into an Italian love song. And after it becomes an Italian love song, it gets sent in two different directions. One by a guy named Mozart, who heard it when he was a student in Italy and did these 12 variations on it and it becomes major then. It stays minor when it goes to Romania, and it becomes a folk song about an ox cart. I don't know. And it hangs out in Eastern Europe that way, but then it comes to France, and it comes to the rest of Europe through Mozart, and it turns major, and it also becomes, anyone for 100 million bonus points? Cantor?
Moldau.
Oh, okay, you guys are way higher brow. Yes, it is also the Waldau about a river, but I was looking for Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Because Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, again, it's major, not minor, same as Hatikva. And so he uses this, Pete Seeger, to introduce a song he wrote called All Mixed Up. And the song is basically about how in our world today, everything is all sort of mixed together, right? He sings, the language that we speak, I promised I wasn't going to sing, never mind, he said, right, the language we speak is German, Latin, and part Greek. He goes through all the different ways in which our culture is a hodgepodge, and everything is going to get all mixed up. And again, for Seeger in the days when he wrote that song, that was maybe a goal, right? A sort of melting pot idea that America would become sort of one big homogeneous culture built of all these different things, but eventually sort of leveled out into one thing. And the mixing up is something that I think we as Jews in America, and we can talk, but in general as minorities in other places, or for Jews or for whatever group you are, I don't know if that's the goal. And it actually might feel a little dangerous to think, well, you're only going to take me if I give up who I am and become part of this main culture. I don't know if I like that, but it's something that we've been dealing with, friends, since this week's Parsha. Because as we get out of Egypt, there is an all mixed up moment. We're getting out of Egypt, and also with them, says the Torah, V'gam, an Erev Rav. A mixed multitude. Arov, to arov, it is some kind of mixture. Rav means big, large, greatness. A mixed multitude goes with the Israelites, and with them their livestock and their flocks and their herds. So the commentaries and later rabbis have a question. So, okay, what do you mean when we left Egypt, with them comes a mixed multitude of people? Now, you might look at that and think a mixed multitude just means there were lots of them and they were all coming from different areas and, just a whole bunch of people left. Like, it doesn't mean anything. That's not what the rabbis are going to say, of course. So Rashi says that this Erev Rav, this mixed multitude, is a huge number of people that converted to Judaism during the period of the enslavement, and that they left with everyone now as Jews. But they're called this mixed multitude. And Ibn Ezra says that they are non-Jews that were sort of trying to sneak out with the Jews. Right? They didn't actually care about the Israelites. They weren't part of the Israelites, but they were like, hey, the door's open, everybody's leaving, let's just try to get out with them. And Ibn Ezra then points out that this word is used again later. There's an asafsuf, some kind of riffraff, I think is the way the New JBS translates that, in the book of Numbers that gets the Israelites into trouble. And Ibn Ezra says, see, those guys, the ones that the non-Israelites that snuck out with us, stuck around and then caused trouble. And by the way, as we go through these commentaries, you can see much of the same way that in-groups deal with newcomers or minorities all the time. Whether we are talking about America and minorities, whether we're talking about our community and non-Jews, our community and minorities, we have these considerations, these concerns, right? The question of have they converted? Are they now a part of us or not? If they're not, but they're here, are they going to cause trouble? What's going to be the problem moving forward? And Rashbam, another commentary, says that the Erev Rav was a group of people who had helped to assimilate. And it's kind of unclear in Rashbam if he means that they've assimilated into the Israelite culture or they helped the Israelites assimilate into Egyptian culture. He just says it's about assimilation. Again, something that we can see as we think about our world today. But there's two that I want to point out that say something I think kind of interesting. Hakatava Kabbalah, Yaakov Tzvi of Mecklenburg, don't worry, he'll be in one of our classes later. Hakatava Kabbalah says that the Erev Rav were other nations that the Egyptians had brought into slavery. And he names them. They're the Kutim, they're the Ludites, they're the Numidians, they're the Idumeans, they're all these different groups that had been brought into slavery the same way that the Israelites had, that they were there, and that the Israelites got them out intentionally. That as they were being freed, and they're sort of turned to their neighbors, and they say, hey, our God's getting us out, do you guys want to come along? And that this Erev Rav were these other nations that joined them. And then Kasuto says, he points out this verse that they brought the cows and the flocks and the herds and the sheep, and says if it weren't for this Erev Rav, the Israelites might have starved on their way out. Because these are the ones that, right, we didn't even have time to let the bread rise, and these guys are bringing their flocks and their herds and their sheep so that everyone has something to eat on the way as we go. And so latent in this context and in these comments is an idea that the Erev Rav, the diversity of this group, was beneficial both to the Israelites and to the non. That we benefited from them, and that they brought these cows and flocks and sheep and herds with them, and they benefited from us because in our liberation moment, we had the presence of mind to turn around and help someone else. And this is something that is incredibly important for us to think about today and in our world. It's incredibly important for us to think about in our community and how we treat everyone who's here. People who are part of the community and have been here for 50 years, people who are brand new to the community, people who are Jewish, people who are Jewish adjacent, who are still members and still loved here. It's something that we need to think about as we think about what it means to be a welcoming and inclusive place. And Rabbi Sachs, we're so happy that you're here to lead us in conversations about that this whole weekend. And it's also, friends, something that we need to think about in our world. I was in a meeting, and it doesn't matter what it was, and it wasn't with people in this community, but it was with Jews from somewhere else, and we were talking about a policy or something, and someone said the word DEI, which means diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they said it like it was a swear word. And they said it like it was a swear word that we all understand. Like, everyone knows that DEI is the worst thing that's ever happened to the Jewish people. So therefore, ... And I just want to talk about this for a second. And let me be very clear. Whatever is and isn't a part of the set of DEI policies and principles of a government or a company or anything, some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them seem to be anti-Semitic, some of them don't. I'm not getting involved in specifically what a DEI policy might be, but the principles behind it are not only Jewish, they are the only thing that has kept Jews safe in America. Period, full stop. Our wealth does not matter. Our power does not matter. The fact that we live in a country founded on the principles of tolerance and inclusion and safety and the rule of law is the only thing that has kept us safe and the only thing that will keep us safe. And we endanger that to our peril in this country. So when we think about what it means to be a part of an Erev Rav, a mixed multitude, it's incumbent on us to think about how we can make that Erev Rav that Kasuto and Hakatava Kabbalah saw that is a mutually beneficial one, where we're looking out for each other and others are looking out for us. Because it's really, as I think I've said a million times, the only way that we can get through this. And I want to be clear about one other thing as we're talking about the value of what it means to be a part of a diverse community. It is something that is a part of Jewish values, to be sure. It is not what I would maybe put in the top 10. In fact, in our Parsha class this past week, we were talking about all of the different commentaries. And at the end of the class, I was sort of using this as a way to kind of get to a kumbaya moment of, isn't this lovely, right? Rashi says X, and Ramban says Y, and Ibn Ezra says Z, and we all read them all, and it's diversity, and isn't this great? Because everything, and someone raised their hand and said, yeah, but Rashi didn't think that it was X, Y, or Z. He thought he was right. Right? So did Ibn Ezra. Right? He thought he was right. He did the idea that lechatchila, that at its outset we're looking for a plurality, is present in some places in our tradition. Right? We intentionally preserve the minority opinion in a ruling so that later courts might pick it up and say, oh, actually those guys that were wrong, they're right. Right? We don't work in such a strict dogmatic way that we erase it. But we also believe that people should hold to what they believe in. And that sometimes there is a right answer and sometimes there is a wrong answer, and that's okay to believe as well. But we in this community need to talk about what it means to support diversity, what it means to support justice in the world, because in this space, we're allowed to, and we should. We should talk about morality here because this is our world, and we don't need to worry about what other people are saying or doing. And also because it's part of our job in everyone's lives. I'm going to give you one little bit of sociology at the end here. So there's a professor at Brown whose name is Dunkelman, and I forget his first name, Mark Dunkelman at Brown, who writes about the rings of people's social connections. Right? We have our inner ring. Our inner ring is our family, right? Our immediate family, maybe our best of friends. Our outer ring are the big groups that we belong to, right? To Jews, to Eagles fans, go Birds, to right whatever the larger groups that we have. And then there's a middle ring, and the middle ring are close connections with weak ties. The middle ring are groups that we belong to with somewhat of a large number of people that we don't necessarily have to be a part of or not, or engage with or not. That's our neighbors. That's your pickleball league. That's your church or synagogue. And in America today, says this professor, we're losing that middle ring. We're more connected in some ways to our friends and family than ever, right? Like I text my wife all day long. Like we can talk to each other all the time. We are very connected to that inner ring, and we're more aware of our outer ring than ever before as well. Right? I know what groups I belong to. I know what groups I don't belong to. I can think about that. But how well do we know our friends and our neighbors? How well do we know the acquaintances at work that we don't necessarily see all the time, but like they're there? We don't see them as much. And what this professor writes is the inner ring teaches us love. How to love ourselves, how to love someone. The outer ring teaches us ideology. What do I believe in? What do I not believe in? Where do I belong? And the middle ring teaches us tolerance. Because in the middle ring, we sit in a room with people that we might disagree with, but we actually have to maybe talk to or maybe don't. And so we learn how to actually interact with that person on your basketball team who has different political views than you, or that neighbor who believes a different religion than you, or the people in Shul who think a different thing about Judaism than you. We learn tolerance from that middle ring. And the fact that we're losing it is scary. But in this room, we're not losing it. You're all here right now. Thank you for being a part of it. We're going to learn tolerance from each other. We're going to be connected to each other. And we need to have conversations about diversity and what it means and what it can mean and how it can be good for the world, for the Jews, for all of us. Not bad is something we all have to do together. We have to have the conversations in this space because there are limiting places where it can be had. And we have to have the conversation in this space because it is something that we all have in our core as a fundamental value of our people, as well as a fundamental value of what will keep us safe in the long run. And we have to do it because it's what's right. And we all have to work together. Whether we're talking about the Erev Rav who helped and turned around and got other people out, or we're talking about the other anniversary we saw this week, the liberation of Auschwitz, and other people helping us in our time of need. We have to work together for this, and we have to push the moral arc of the universe towards justice. It's long and it's slow, but if we don't push, it's never going to get there. Shabbat Shalom.